You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
Mission Log Prodigy, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. Episode 14, Crossroads.
Welcome back into another episode of Mission Log Prodigy, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. I'm Norman Lau.
And I'm Ashley Victoria Robinson. Just like our flagship Mission Log podcast, each week here on Mission Log Prodigy, we discuss each and every episode of this animated series. Woo. I don't know, it's spooky season, who knows? Discover what makes each of them special and see if there are any morals, meanings, or messages that we have learned.
This week, episode 14, Crossroads. Dun, dun, dun. Now, please remember that Mission Log Prodigy is an in-depth review podcast. So if you haven't seen Crossroads yet, you might want to put us on pause. And then you might want to put us not on pause, but we'll wait until you're done. And then you can enjoy the episode with the rest of us talking about it here on Mission Log Prodigy.
And Mission Log Prodigy is produced for YouTube and as a regular podcast. So please be sure to engage that like and subscribe button and subscribe to us here on the Roddenberry Entertainment YouTube channel. Don't you want to see our beautiful faces? Please also make sure to listen to podcast.roddenberry.com, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you listen to your Roddenberry podcast. Just put it on at the same time, hit all the buttons at the same time. We want the listens. And you could also follow Mission Log Prodigy on Twitter at ML_Prodigy to keep up with all our latest news and updates.
Now, before we jump into the recap, here's why our podcast is so unique. And if you're a first-time listener, you're going to want to listen. If you are a veteran listener, you know why it's special. So we like hearing from you, the younger Prodigy fans out there, and we love when you share your thoughts on the show. And this show is going to be kind of special because something big, well, small but big, happens in the show. Big. I guess big but small happens in the show. So please send us your 1 to 2 minute voice message to missionlog-prodigy at roddenberry.com. That's missionlog, the little dash mark, not the word dash prodigy at roddenberry.com. And in your message, please answer these questions. What is your first name and age? Did you like the episode? What was your favorite part? And what did you learn?
Also, if your name is Dash, I'm going to give you extra points for sending us a voice memo this week because we look forward to hearing your comments, which will be featured at the end of the show. It's my favorite part of the show. And just to start things off here, of course, are our answers to these exact same questions. So, Norm, big overarching question. Did you like the episode?
Okay, I quote unquote liked it. Most of the time I say I love the episode, but I liked it. And, you know, it's hard following up All the World's a Stage, which I loved, like to the fibrest of my beings. But I like calling these kind of episodes workhorse episodes, service episodes that kind of, they have to provide a purpose for the series.
I will also say that if you might be someone who might have watched ahead, that's a super on point observation.
I'm precognizant like that. I haven't watched ahead, but you kind of feel it. You know, you feel it in the air, you feel it in the water, that kind of thing.
Ooh, okay, Galadriel. We're 14 episodes deep, which I know for like all of our 90s, like OG generation Star Trek fans are like a mere 14 episodes. That is nothing. But 14 episodes deep, talking about it every week with you and everyone in the Discord. Shout out to the Discord. We definitely start to recognize these kind of patterns. Of course, I like this episode too. I mean, I'm not a monster.
Oh my God.
Although, can you imagine if one time we were like, I didn't really like the world would simply end. I would pass away. It would be the end of all things.
I would love to know if that would ever happen. You know, and I'm wondering if like the Hagemans or the writers or Aaron are like,
they would tweet right at us,
right?
I will say I think I liked the look of it. Maybe more than the actual. I was really here, like my little Canadian heart was like super here for the aesthetic. And like I alluded to earlier, this episode is kind of the middle of the sandwich. And I think serving that narrative purpose, it does an absolutely great job. So, okay, I want to know now, what was your favorite part of the episode?
Okay, I know this is like a strange take. It really is, but I am really enjoying the first officer Tyses a lot.
I love
in this
him.
series. And I really liked when Tyses just kind of reminded Janeway, like, you need to think about whether or not you really want to go into the neutral zone because of, spoiler alert, if you haven't watched the episode, because of your emotional attachment to Commander or Captain Chakotay. I was like, what? How dare you? Step off, Tyses. What's going on there?
I think we're going to see that echoed in future episodes. And it reminded me of in their flashback when Chakotay was like, yes, I'm going back to the Delta Quadrant. They had a very tender moment. And I don't know if we're going to get into full kiss territory, but that was something that was an undercurrent, something that was, I think, potentially explored and then discarded in the original series. So I just love any like maintaining affection between the two. But Tysus is he's a fun character. He's like currently vying. I mean, no one will ever beat Rock, but he is like vying for like top spot of the Dauntless crew, in my opinion.
I dig it because he's like a by the numbers kind of character, and we haven't seen like a really engaging Andorian, not for a while. I mean, I love Hemmer, don't get me wrong, but
he's also a new character. So yeah. And he's also a fairly reserved Andorian. So I'm interested if we will learn if that's just who he is as a person, if this is a little bit more of how Andorians have evolved as a species since becoming part of Starfleet. Like, I'm just really interested because he is an atypical Andorian, but we still had that sort of brush of conflict that you expect when dealing with Andorian characters.
Oh yeah. They're bristly. How about you? What was your favorite part?
I really liked the Jenkem Tellarite cultural download that we got, because I've been saying for a while that he's a character who I think we've really needed to focus on and get a little more personal, a little bit more like, he's a great joke machine. But I feel like since last week's episode, we've actually started to get a little more insight into who he is, who he frames himself as, and the whole like runt, like that's really interesting to me.
I like that.
And that's something that culturally like absolutely makes sense for the Tellarites. And I'm interested to see him bring that on board. Also, like, shout out to all the short kings. I thought that was such a great idea that like, this is who he is. He is going to be this wee and this powerful forever. And we love him for it. So that's just something that I've been waiting for such a long time. So like the fangirl in me was just so happy.
You know, we've always wanted the super rock centric, Jankum centric episode, but we're getting so close. It's kind of like, he's getting these great moments. And I think maybe finally in the next 5 or 6 episodes, we might get that one.
If
that
not,
one was just Jankum.
I think it could be like an early season 2 undertaking. Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
All right. Last question, if not leastest question. That's honestly probably the most important. What did you learn? Because you can learn things from your favorite things and your least favorite. Not to imply that this is our least favorite thing, but Norm, what did you learn? I'm very interested in what your answer is.
Well, you know, there's we say this on Mission Log, the main show, that there are these kind of like, hey, you see Timmy moments, you know, like, hey, this is very obvious. And in this episode, I was like, I don't see the meaning until the meaning actually is that obvious. And that's when Janeway tells Dal, you know, like, don't be afraid of going after what you really want. You know, don't be afraid of failing. And I'm like, there it is. It was like a billboard because it was so clear and it was so defined. And it's kind of like, okay, they're going to start merging these two crews together between these two central figures for each crew. You have Admiral Janeway and then you have Dal. And it was almost there and it didn't happen. So it sets the tone for the conflict between these two crews, between their two captains now. And it was right there. It's it was like, it's not necessarily the central moment of the episode, but it was slightly off central and I liked it. How about you?
I would say that for me, this episode threw like a spotlight up on the different but the same nature between like Hollow Janeway and IRL Janeway. That's how I distinguish them in my notes. And I admire the subtle ways that the writing chose to throw that into the relief. I think it's really good stuff. And I think once again, this kind of examination of these really two different aspects of her personality that we've chosen to highlight in these two incarnations of her is like really subtle storytelling, especially for a show that you and I are constantly fighting back against, like, it's not just a kid's show. It's not just an animated show. It's not just an all ages show. And like in this episode, I think the writing really clicks into that. I have more on this point later, but I got very like when we saw them start to merge, we've been waiting for so long. I got really, really excited.
Yeah, super. It's a interesting balance that they're playing in this episode where you're
like hard job.
It's like magnets. If you take two magnets and kind of like you can feel them attract, and all of a sudden they start repelling against each other no matter how hard you push them together.
Yeah,
that's our cruise right now.
Absolutely.
No matter how hard, they're starting to merge and kind of push each other away at the same time.
And one of them will inevitably flip, and then they will.
We'll get there.
Yeah,
I'm confident, but it's what will happen when we get there is what I'm most concerned about. But that's for another episode. For this episode, we're going to get right into the recap for episode 14, Crossroads, written by Lisa Schultz-Boyd and directed by Stephen Chong-an and Sung Shin. Aboard the USS Dauntless, Ensign Essentia aids the diviner who is on his feet, trying to regain his strength and his memory. She says a few encouraging words to him as Janeway arrives to check in on their progress and to tell him that she has a lead on the whereabouts of Barnes Frex, the sole survivor from the destroyed Federation relay station. And suddenly, like a thunderbolt, the diviner remembers his daughter's name, Gwendala. Meanwhile, on a snow-covered planet, Captain Dal orders to stash the protostar until they can find a way to contact Starfleet, because the living construct that is hidden underneath the bridge is still a threat and cannot risk any more exposure. Everyone prepares to abandon ship, and Rocktalk scans Murph's cocoon one last time to make sure he's okay before placing him in a protective backpack. Once assembled in the shuttle bay, the crew says their reluctant goodbyes to hologram Janeway, who promises them that she won't be lonely, and once reactivated, will seem like they have been only gone for a nanosecond. And with that, Dal places the computer in sleep mode, and once they are all safely outside, he fires his phaser at a snowy ledge high above, creating an avalanche which hides the protostar. And after Rock tells him that a storm is brewing, it's time to find a new ship. After hiking a long way through blinding snowstorms, our intrepid crew come upon Denaxi Depot, the only spaceport in the sector, and perfect for those who want to disappear. Upon arrival, they catch the attention of one Captain Okana, an outrageous and ruggedly handsome smuggler whose ship may not look like much, but she's got it where it counts, Gwen. But it seems that Okana is in a bit of trouble himself as a pair of reptilian security guards haul him away, leaving Dal and his crew to find help elsewhere in this wretched hive. Inside, Barnes Frex is surrounded by a captive audience that is entertained by his daring escape story, while Vice Admiral Janeway and her officers beam down from the Dauntless to find him since he is ignoring his communicator. And amidst all of the crowded confusion, the crews of the Protostar and the Dauntless accidentally bump into one another. Rock is completely ignored by Tysus. Dr. Newham gives Jankum a blunt lesson in his runtish heritage, and Essentia finds Gwen haggling for a ride with a Klingon captain. When Gwen introduces herself, Essentia realizes that this is the diviner's Gwendala and tells Gwen that her father is looking for her and is aboard the Dauntless. Gwen makes a run for it and hides on a nearby transport, while Dal musters the courage to approach a woman with an all-too-familiar voice, who prefers to be called Vice Admiral Janeway and not Captain. But before he has a chance to properly explain his situation with the Protostar, he is interrupted when Janeway's officers haul in Barnes Frex, forcing Dal to hide for fear of being discovered. And when Frex finally describes who attacked his station to Janeway, she quickly realizes that her band of thieves are here, especially the crafty purple tramp who she just met. The chase is on. Janeway's officers are hot on the heels of our young heroes who are forced to steal a hovercraft so they can speed away from the very officers who they once so desperately wanted to find. They also discover one outrageous captain hiding in a storage compartment of their hovercraft, which is why they are also being chased by a squad of those very same Xindi reptilian guards he was captured by earlier. But he's not entirely useless, as he provides a fuel canister that supercharges their engines for a boost of much-needed speed to get to the Protostar. Dal and his crew, now including Okana, reactivate hologram Janeway to get all the systems online. Vice Admiral Janeway arrives just in time to watch the Protostar emerge from its snowy hiding place and speed off. But once aboard the Dauntless, she and her crew pursue the Protostar. Amidst the chaos of the escape and the current chase, Murph has emerged from his cocoon. And before any of his crew realize just how different he looks, Murph jumps up on a console and accidentally fires a torpedo at the Dauntless, who then returns fire and cripples the protostar's proto-engine with a well-placed photon torpedo. Unable to outrun the Dauntless, Okana suggests that they disguise their ship's energy signature and enter the neutral zone, where the Dauntless cannot follow, because if they did, they would violate the already tense Federation-Romulan treaty. Commander Tices reminds Vice Admiral Janeway of just that, when he refuses to carry out her order of following the protostar into the neutral zone, citing that her judgment is emotionally clouded because of her determination to find Chakotay. Suddenly, 3 Romulan warbirds decloak, and their lead commander, Cassif, reminds Janeway that any violation of the neutral zone would be considered an act of war. The end. I had to get so dramatic with that because it just felt dramatic.
It was this for Prodigy was a very dark is too far, but it was very moody, very high drama episode.
It was very driven. Like they were always pushing you towards kind of like this inevitable confrontation, I guess is the right word. Right. Yeah. So
okay, can we talk about the Cindy, please?
Yes. I know how excited you are about them. Yeah, let's do it.
I mean, I joke and say I'm an Enterprise apologist. I know here on Mission Log, Enterprise is always given its due and its respect by both like all hosts and fans and listeners. But like the Xindi are one of the coolest Star Trek aliens. And of course, because of where they fell in Enterprise, it's kind of hard to backward engineer them into things. But I just so appreciated seeing them here. The reptilians are one of the scary, because some Xindis are like kind of beautiful and interesting and ethereal, and some of them are like the insectoids are really scary, and the reptilians are really scary. It's a great way to get a big lizard monster, which is so classic Trek, without doing the gore. I feel like the Gorn are real hot right now. So I was just so when it was like, wait, Xindi, wait, what? Yes, more, please.
Yeah, and I like that. They don't really have to be overtly explained. It's kind of like the if you know, you know. And 100%. Then you kind of do the Leonardo DiCaprio Once Upon a Time in Hollywood point, and it's like, hey, that's a Xindi. I have to dig out my Enterprise videos now because I missed the Xindi, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about probably the most adorable piece of tech in this episode, Rock's incubator backpack for Murph. Because
it gives me Baby Bjorn, but with your pet in it vibes, or like those Explorer cat backpacks.
Exactly.
And you know that she had to build that specifically for Murph. That's love.
Yeah. Exactly. There's I guess a big sistery kind of dynamic that's going to be happening soon. As opposed to almost like a maternally motherly thing, because she was always that way with Murph, but now it's I don't know, it's different.
And it's interesting to give that to the youngest, or maybe the most emotionally, because like, what are ages? Who ages at what rate in space? But sort of the most emotionally young. It's really interesting to give her this, maternal or maybe quasi-maternal. And if you want to sort of peel back the layers on that, this is something that's been enhanced and encouraged by her relationship with Gwyn and Janeway. And I think that's really nice.
Oh, that's actually a great observation. Yeah.
I really appreciate that none of the women are in conflict in this show. Not that there's never been conflict, but like it's very sisterly, very family oriented, and I think that's really important.
Now, I know that there have been some people like online saying that we've returned to a little bit of a kind of Star Wars tone, and we had a very Star Wars tone at the very beginning of the very first episode, but I felt like a very Lord of the Rings vibe in the scene where they were going through the snow. They buried the protostar, because the music almost sounded very Howard Shore-ish. Nice job, Nami, on the music there. So I was just like, yeah, they're going through Karatras.
I know. Okay. I was like, I saw that note in your notes, and I was like, name check the mountains. If anyone listening hasn't watched The Lord of the Rings, that's a fairly family-friendly trilogy you can watch as the holidays come up.
Well, this is like our Fellowship. Like it's like the breaking of the Fellowship, but they're doing Fellowship-y kind of stuff, right?
And it's funny that you bring up Star Wars, because like we're always an exercise in references.
Sure. Yeah.
and with Rebels in particular as an influence, they could be doing so much worse. But when everybody showed up in their parkas, I got mad Star Trek '09 vibes. I was like, Leonard Nimoy is about to come out of the snow and help us and let us. And I know it's not the only Star Trek thing that's ever had parkas in it, but like that was the vibe that I got right away. And it just like, again, it pleased my little Canadian heart to see everybody dealing with the winters.
See, I was feeling like the away team jackets from the Wrath of Khan when they were on Regular One,
which are also very like, I guess they're more like a bomber jacket, like, or a flight jacket, but they're definitely for cold climb, and that's okay.
I can't wait to see just how the cosplay is going to be like in the next convention season, because between like Lower Decks and this, some really cool stuff. Matter of fact, there are a lot of, now I know that this is both a video and audio podcast, but if you're listening to the audio version, you might want to check out the video version, because I am pointing my finger at the comm badge that Vice Admiral Janeway and her team's wearing on their cold weather gear, because there was a lot of like obvious, take a look at this Starfleet comm badge. Look at this comm badge, guys. This is the comm badge of this era. Was it blatant? Am I reading that too deeply, or is it just coincidence that they kept showing it?
I don't think it was an accident. I don't think anything happens in this show without, maybe if it happens unintentionally, I don't think it's never addressed sort of on the back end of production, not to get too deep into like how many people have to approve an episode before it goes live.
Yeah.
But I think that's part of I want a nicer word than fetishization, because that has like a nasty undertone, but we really laud Starfleet as an organization in this show in particular. The goal is to get to Starfleet. It's to live Starfleet values. And I think because this is the official, I know they've been cadets, I know they have uniforms, I know they've been on the Protostar, I know we're doing captain's logs and all that, but this is the sort of official merging of our Guardians of the Galaxy-esque band of misfits with all of the trappings that we know from Starfleet. So I think that the constant cutting to the comm badges was definitely intentional. I also just think that these are of all of the new Trek era comm badges, and I would put the Section 31 black badge maybe like a tick below. I think the Prodigy ones are my favorite, so I'm not even mad about it, honestly. They look so cool.
Yeah, they look great. They obviously stand for like the trying to obtain something that's just out of reach.
Yeah.
No, it's always just out of reach, especially to Jankum, because come on. Like now I love why there's a difference in kind of like the physiologies of all these different calories that we're seeing. He is. That's a great way of putting it. Okay, now we're going to have to assign, names and roles to all of the cast, the Protostar.
Oh, man. That's a tweet. That's a tweet coming at ML_Prodigy for sure.
That's so good. But yeah, it's just like right out of reach. And I love that it's always kind of like this, almost kind of like it's on a pedestal, if you will. It's like, that's what I want to be able to achieve. And I'm just inches away from reaching it, which is catastrophic. You might as well be parsecs away from reaching it, to use a spacey term.
Also, as a short person, like I identify with his struggles in my heart and soul. We also got we got a lot of pop culture references in this episode. Like Jankum fully says, "Hold on to your butts, pal." And I was like, "Ooh, does Jurassic Park has Jacob seen Jurassic Park? Do we think Starfleet officers would like Jurassic Park, or does the irresponsible nature of the scientists rankle against somebody like Rock, who's up here being like, oh, cumulonimbus, I will tell you exactly what these clouds are doing right now.
I love that. I love that when she did that. She's like, of course, they're cumulonimbus, because I know these things.
Oh, I was the cloud girl for a bit in elementary school, so my heart was like, yes, we love.
All right, so one of the last things we have to talk about is probably the biggest egg in the room is Murph.
Thoughts and prayers. All good vibes.
It will take a couple episodes, I think, of getting used to. And remember, it's all about context. It's not about like that Murph change. It's about, is this change just going to serve a purpose to the story? I hope so.
I think I have a note about this later on, but I kind of want to get into it right now.
Okay, let's jump into it.
Murph is a character who at first blush is like, I call them yuck yuck characters. Jankum is that as well, and a little bit more so. But Murph actually, as a narrative device, tells you almost everything that's going to happen in the episode if he doesn't have to do something like swallow the baby star, like if he doesn't have to do like big wild space alien thing. And I think the fact that Murph is entering a period of metamorphosis and change is directly heralding an evolution for all of the cast, and I think it's running on a parallel narrative track to the merging of these crews. And from now on, I'm going to be watching what he does even more closely, because I think he's secretly like the prophet of this show. But I'm also, you and I are really attached to Murph and what Murph looks like. I'm nervous about what Murph is going to look like when he reemerges from his cocoon. I also just watched Gremlins 2 last night, and so I have nothing but frightening thoughts about the Murph evolution.
I think maybe Murph is the prodigy. Maybe, because there are so many different red herrings, and they're all legitimate. Like Dal has his destiny because Starfleet is, ambiguous that way when he went through Frex's scanner. Gwyn is also a prodigy because she was created that way because of her father. Now, all of a sudden, Rock has like this incredible brain for science that's been unlocked in this giant rock body that's been misunderstood. Jankum believes he's royalty. Right, and because of the time loops. But now all of a sudden, like everyone's had kind of like their little bitty step up, and now Murph all of a sudden, and we didn't want it, and we all love Murph. Everyone out there loves the Murph that we have grown to love in only 10, 11, 24-minute episodes. We've come to love this character so much, right? But at the same time, though, maybe this character is the character that we've been paying attention to only in one way.
Yeah.
In that cute, cuddly way. It's easy to let those hobbits run underfoot and get into mischief.
Is Murph Pippin my favorite hobbit? I hope anyone else is enjoying this parallel as much as you and I are.
He's the one that eats the most. If he ate an apple in front of you, you would lose your mind.
If Billy Boyd wants to come over to my house and eat apples, he's welcome to come anytime.
Fool of a Murph. So that's all you have to say.
That's a t-shirt.
Yep. What else you got there, Ashley?
Okay. So can we talk about how long we've been waiting for this particular episode?
This has been the episode I think that we were always eventually thinking would do what it did, I think, right?
But I think you and I, for a long time, anticipated this would be the episode, because we always knew episode 10 was going to be a break. We didn't know how long and how devastating that break was going to be. But I definitely...
8 months of devastating. 8 months.
But we survived. We're here now. That's what matters. And I think like Murph leveling up, I kind of alluded to this earlier. I think this is the show evolving and stepping up in a really interesting way, and I didn't think it could get any better. But it's so gratifying when something you've been waiting for a long time pays off this well, because we've also all watched the shows. I'm going to throw the CW under the bus for this, and I watched a lot of CW shows. I like CW when that couple finally gets together and then the show is not as good. Or Frasier, like when Niles and Daphne finally got married, you were like, well, what else do we do now? And the way this episode handled this, after a year and a half of anticipation from the time we knew the show was coming and everything, and all of it's managed all of our expectations so well. Like the 6 episodes still to come, I feel like every week is gonna be like, like I'm like, how much better can the show get? And then it keeps getting better and better and better.
I think that a lot of that is earned. We've been talking about all of kind of these smaller moments, and in 24 minutes, and some of that is eaten up by the credits. So you're looking at, probably or somewhere around the 22 minutes ish.
Yes.
Every single scene has to count for something. And, just to go to a small production track here, everything has to be planned, organized, created, and then edited and then rendered, all of those things. So it's not like a director saying, hey, take that again because I want to get a different feel. You can't do that way.
Yeah.
Right. So everything has to be so meticulously, kids, that's a big word, so planned perfectly, because you don't really have a chance of making a mistake, because mistakes are expensive in animation, and everyone in the business knows that. So when you're watching certain things happen, when you're watching certain changes made, it's not because they just want them to be there. It's because they have to be there. Case in point. So we were talking about this offline a little bit, Ashley, and like I have a little bit of suspicion, that's building up with Ensign Essentia. And I didn't have this before.
Yeah.
Right? I didn't have it before, but now certain things are starting to kind of like fall in line. Ever since they found the diviner, Ensign Essentia is the one at the beginning of the episode that's with the diviner, trying to help the diviner heal. The very first time, it was her suggesting to Dr. and I always get his name wrong, forgive me, it's Noam. Dr. Noam, that
Dr. Noom.
Was it Noom? I said Noom. I said
he's here to help you with your portion control. The smaller plate is the key.
And remember, psychology, folks. It's about psychology just as much about fasting. But no, so you had the doctor, told by Ensign Essentia saying, hey, maybe you should use the fluid in his survival suit to help his healing process. There's that. I'm like, okay, sure, that makes sense. But this episode, she's walking him around and she says something like, there's nothing that can stop you. And then he just says right after that, no obstacle will stand in my way, or something along the lines of his Val Nukat oath. And she said it in a way where she was hoping that he would pick up on that, and he did. And it kind of unlocked like his like Wolverine healing process, right? Because all of a sudden, boom, Gwendala's name just pops into his head right after that.
I always forget that her full name was Gwendala, and how what a beautiful is Finnish, again, like Tolkien Elvish kind of name that is. Yeah, Gwendala, I think
my progeny.
I also think Essentia is so interesting, voiced by Jamila Jamil, because if you want to put a criticism on the way that some of the Trill have been portrayed in past series of Star Trek, they're always these very beautiful, very ethereal characters, again, like the Tolkien elves. And it's really interesting to see this character be the one that we chose to have empathy for the diviner. Which ultimately is very Star Trek, and it's very Starfleet, right? Like, this is a character who's a person who's obviously suffered a lot of damage. As far as they know, has done nothing wrong. They deserve nothing but empathy and help. But
sure,
how she knows this is like watching the Winter Soldier have the password said to him, and I'm like, ooh, I think she, I kind of hope she's not a baddie, because I like her a lot, but also if she is a baddie, or maybe if she is having a villain turn and then does the full 360, I'm very interested in what her development. I know you and I are on like Team Tisis, but she's a incredibly compelling character. The writing on her is chef's kiss. Very, very good.
It's smart. Again, it's in a very short time frame. It's very economical.
We've known her for like 5 episodes, if you count the teaser introduction of them at the mid-series finale.
I know. It's she's definitely worth keeping an eye on. That's for sure. And I know that this is a small, weird thing, but for some odd reason, I don't know why, like her fingerless gloves like Gwen wears catch my attention.
Oh,
I know. It's probably nothing, but it's probably everything. I don't know. I'm just saying.
My brain's like, what if she's Gwen from the Fisher? What if she's Gwen's mom? What if she's Gwen's sister? What if she's a boy?
And there's also one thing that I think that we should start maybe having some of the audience think about. Again, maybe they can chime in on social media. Mm-hmm. Don't forget that 17 years ago, the Order was involved with what was going on in Tars Lamora, and we haven't mentioned them since. That's the sleeper detail that all of a sudden in an episode or two, you'll be like, wait a second, they're out there somewhere.
Okay, I need people when they send in next week's voice memos to talk about this, and I need people to like join in on Twitter, because I am full tinfoil hat conspiracy theory on Essentia right now. It looks like the little swan, like I've gotten some great takeout, like, oh, I hadn't even thought of that. That is so cool. The gloves, what a smart detail of you to notice.
And it's just there. It doesn't, again, all these things are
and they didn't call any attention to it.
No.
It just is.
And they didn't. Okay, so this is why the Hagemans and Dan Ibon and Aaron Walke and everyone on the team that they're just so nefariously awesome, because everything that you're seeing is in plain sight. Like the whole thing with the reveal with the Protostor's third engine is in the credits. Every single credit.
Yes, it is.
Right. It's not like it's anything new, but we'll give it the context of what it stands for. Then everything changes. So all of it's out there. It's just when it's given the context, everything changes, like Murph.
Yeah.
Right?
And if you consider that Essentia is bonding with the diviner, whether or not it's as layered as we just ran down the conspiracy rabbit hole on or not, that bond it's another extension of the found family theme that you and I talk about every single episode. Like, she is finding a connection to somebody outside of herself and going out of her way to help him. And that's it would be fascinating if she winds up siding with the diviner and kind of steps into the Gwyn role as Gwyn maybe replaces her in the Starfleet family.
Maybe she's again.
How is there only 6 episodes left? I'm not emotionally prepared.
I'm gonna lose my mind. So 6 times 30. So that is like what, like 2 hours of total,
give or take.
Viewing time. Yeah, 2.5 hours. So don't worry. We're gonna get the Hagemans on here after this is all over, and we're going to ring them for every scrap of information possible. And then they're probably going to do what they do with us in these episodes. They're going to give us an answer, but make us ask like 10 more that they won't. So
yeah, really. And then give an answer that will make sense a year from now.
They're so brilliant. Speaking of brilliant, we usually come to the end of the episode with maybe like 1 or 2 thoughts to wrap up what we've been talking about, because they either pop up organically or it's just something that's so big that we need to talk about it at the very, very, very end. So what do you have for us, Ashley? What's the big last idea that you have?
So
big.
I opened with this, and I feel like it's appropriate to end with this. I was really taken with the sort of mirror meta narrative of the Janeways in this episode. And that's for a number of reasons, not least of which because of like what an important figure Janeway is, not only in this show, but in Star Trek and in this media franchise. And as I was sitting there thinking about it, Star Trek has this long tradition of doubles, dark doubles, secret siblings, twins, and such as, particularly with the mirror universe being the most obvious version of that. And I was like, oh my God, that's what this relationship is. I won't say that it's as nefarious, but we've also seen, particularly in the 90s Star Trek, we've seen mirror universe versions of characters where neither of them is evil.
Yeah.
They're just stuck under different circumstances. And I really appreciate the way we've chosen to highlight Janeway's incredible empathy, but also her strength and resilience as a leader. Because when real life Janeway, Vice Admiral Janeway first met Dal, I was like, oh, she's quite astringent with him. She's very and it's very militaristic. It's like, this is your order. I expect you to respect my authority, which is very, very Janeway. But then so is when they bought back onto the ship and she's like, I'm proud of you. Tell me everything that happened. How long have I been asleep? And just compared to the Murph of it all and compared to the merging of the crews, to me, this was very much another evolution. There's that word again. And the two Janeways probably make one ideal captain if they were to be merged together in the way that like Sherlock and John Watson make a fully functioning human being. They're literary foils for each other, but they are the same person. And it makes me wonder what her growth is going to be coming forward and how, because there's going to be a merging of that character into one, whether it is literally a download into her brain. I don't think we're going that far. Or Vice Admiral Janeway learning some of the lessons that her hollow counterpart is. And I just came away from this episode being like, what is Janeway's arc about to be? Because she's had her little version of Mirror Mirror or a Mirror Darkly, and how is she going to continue to evolve from this point? Because I think because she's a pre-existing character, she's not the person you expect to see that much growth from. But I think it's coming.
And I think we're seeing that. I mean, that's really well put. And it begs a lot of questions. And something also that I saw in this episode, it's like, what happens when you have these kids caught in kind of like the dynamic between the Janeway that they know and love, which is hologram Janeway, versus this Janeway that they've been looking for that's not quite what they expected. And it's not necessarily her fault. And
it's not bad either.
No, it's just again, like Dal is just so far out of reach, but he's not, but he is. And that's what's, I guess it's killing us as the audience. Like you're almost there, there are just, and it's in great kind of soap opera format that you're almost like through the door, but there are so many things working against you that you can't even see or affect, and that's, Janeway's whole understanding of this is all she knows of these kids. They're thieves. They destroyed Federation property. They're on the run
and they
they're
threw this man into space.
Yeah, that's all she knows. But I think when she said they're just kids, you forgot to mention that it changed her perception of the manhunt, because she went from rescue mission to manhunt, and they did a close-up shot of when she said that. So I'm like, okay, she knows that not everything is as it appears. And I think that she's starting to make some concessions for that until they went into the neutral zone, which obviously set her off in a variety of different ways. But I think it will be interesting if at the end of all of this, she actually downloads or maybe talks to hologram Janeway and understands where all of these kids came from and what they had to do to get to her and what they had to sacrifice, or how they grew up faster than they should have along the way, lost a little bit of that childhood innocence, very much like the Hobbits did, on their way to Mount Doom, and then maybe there'll be a scouring of the protostar. I don't know.
I hope not. Maybe a scouring of Tars Lamora would be more acceptable.
Scouring of Tars Lamora would be good.
It's kind of like they have one mom and they've heard about their other mom and now they've met her. And she's not what they expected.
I don't think a lot of things
they're going to build the perfect mom.
Vice Admiral Janeway, your story is just starting. And unfortunately, our podcast is just ending. So, wow, that was a fantastic discussion, Ashley. Yeah.
We could have,
as you would say.
Yeah. We could have talked about this for like another hour, but we got some good stuff coming up. So
that's right.
I know we've reached the end of our show. Quelle tragédie. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here on Mission Log Prodigy. If you enjoyed this show, why wouldn't you? Please make sure that you like, share, subscribe, smash all those buttons to our Mission Log Prodigy playlist on the Roddenberry Entertainment YouTube channel, or find us on your podcatcher of choice, or all of the podcatchers. Like I said, play them all at the same time. Because Mission Log Prodigy is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment, production and technical direction by Earl Green himself. Our website and your opportunity to comment and connect with us is missionlogpodcast.com. And if you would like to support Mission Log directly, and why wouldn't you, you can do so at patreon.com/missionlog.
Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to be with us. And we look forward to sharing our thoughts with you on episode 15 next week. And now, as we do with each and every standard episode of Mission Log Prodigy, we would like to leave you all with these very special incoming transmissions.
Receiving listener communications. Message playback begins.
What is your name and how old are you?
My name is Eli and I am 7 years old.
Did you like the episode?
Yes.
What was your favorite part?
When Murph turned into a human.
And then what did you learn from the episode?
That to tell the truth.
So what's your name?
Sarah.
And how old are you?
7.
Did you like this latest episode?
Yes.
Okay. And what was your favorite part?
My favorite part is when Murph turned into that different thing.
Okay. And what did you learn, or what do you think this episode is trying to teach us?
To just talk instead of to run.
My name is Luke and my age is 7.
All right. Did you like the episode?
Yes.
What was your favorite part?
My favorite part was all of it.
You liked the whole episode?
Yes.
Very exciting. What did you learn from the episode?
That sometimes it's a mistake and you can tell the person that you think you did.
Okay.
You think you did.
You think you can explain the mistake a little bit instead of having to run away?
Yes.
Okay, that's a good idea. So what is your name?
Wesley.
And how old are you?
I am 10 years old.
Did you like the episode?
Yes.
What was your favorite part?
When Murph turned into an alien humanoid.
And what did you learn from the episode?
That sometimes you just gotta do what other people ask you to do.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.